Welcome back to Mr. DuPage's classroom. This lesson is for my General Algebra 2 class. This is Intercept Form Day 1. This is the third and final form that we are going to be looking into for graphing quadratics. The first form was the Vertex form, second form was Standard Form, and this is Intercept Form. So intercept form of quadratic, the equation is going to be a times x minus p times x minus q. Okay? Remember that a, p, and q are just going to be placeholders for numbers. As you can see in example 1, our 2 would be our p and our 4 would be our q. Okay? A determines whether the graph opens up or down. If a is positive, the graph will open up. If a is negative, the graph will open down. Okay? Here we're going to find out what our x-intercepts are based off of our equation. So the x-intercepts based off of the equation will be p0 and q0. Remember what an intercept is? It's where it will cross the x-axis. We've talked about the y-intercept numerous times. This is the x-intercept, so it will cross the x-axis. Notice that the signs have switched, which means that we're taking the opposite of whatever's inside of the parentheses, just like we always have. The vertex is halfway between the two x-intercepts. So the axis of symmetry is going to be the average of the two. It would be p plus q over 2. All right? And to find the y-coordinate of the vertex, we will just substitute x in the equation. So once we find our vertex, it's exactly the same thing as what we've done on vertex form and standard form. It's just going to be a little bit different to start how we're going to graph these, okay? So example 1, does it open up or down? Well, the a value is out front. It would be a positive 1. So in this case, it would open up. We need to find the x-intercepts. Remember that it's going to be these numbers, -2 and -4, but since they are inside of the parentheses, it will be opposite that. So my intercepts will be 2, 0 and 4, 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and plot that. 2, 0, 4, 0. Okay? Now we need to find the axis of symmetry. So I'm going to take 2 plus 4, divide it by 2. So that's 6 divided by 2. So my x would equal 3. So this is our axis of symmetry. Finally, we need to find the vertex. We find the vertex the exact same way we ever have. We're going to take our x. We're going to take our x value right here and plug it back in for our x and our x. So I would take y equals 3 minus 2 times 3 minus 4. That would be equal to 1 times -1, so it would be equal to -1. So my vertex is going to be 3 from right here and -1. Go ahead and plot that point. Next step is to create the table, which is exactly what we would do on any of the other forms as well. We're going to put our vertex in the center just like we always have. We'll add 1, so 4, add 1, so 5, subtract 1, it would be 2, subtract 1, it would be 1. Okay? Now, we know that our x-intercepts are 2, 0, and 4, 0. So when my x is 2, my y would be 0. When my x is 4, my y would be 0. Okay? That's because of the x-intercepts. The other thing you could do is just plug the 4 or the 2 back in for x to find out that y would be 0. So the last step is to plug in this 5 for all of my x's. So y would equal 5 minus 2 times 5 minus 4, which would equal 3 times 1, which is just 3. So it would be 5, 3, and 1, 3. Go ahead and connect my points, and there's my graph. Okay. Last step, as always, is to find our domain and range. Well, we know, or you should know at this point, my domain is double bar R, all real. My range would be y is greater than, because it opens up. The lowest point is right here. That is -1. So y is greater than -1. Okay. Example 2. Step 1. We need to find out whether it opens up or down. Well, I have a negative out front, so my a value would be -1. That means that it opens down. Then we need to find our x-intercepts. Our x-intercepts. They're going to come from this -2, this +4. So it would be 2, 0, and -4, 0. Remember to plot those right away. The next step is to find our axis of symmetry. Okay. In order to find the axis of symmetry, I'm going to take 2 plus -4 over 2. Those come from here and here. Okay. Well, 2 plus -4 would get me -2 over 2, which is in fact -1. Remember, that is x equals for axis of symmetry. Now that I have my x value of my vertex, which I can start writing my vertex then, I need to find my y value. In order to do that, I will take -1, plug it back in for x and x. So y equals -1 minus 2 times -1 plus 4. Remember, that's actually -1. So it's -1 times -3 times +3. Okay. Well, -1 times -3 would be +3. +3 times +3 would be +9. So our vertex is -1, +9. So go here to -1, +9's here. Make a point. Remember to make our dotted line for the axis of symmetry. Okay. What was the next step on every other form that we've ever done? It's to make a table. So x, y. Put our vertex in the center. Add 1, 0, or -1 plus 1 is 0. Plus 1 is +1. Minus 1 would be -2. Minus 1 would be -3. If I put 0 in for x, I would get negative 0 minus 2, 0 plus 4. Negative, this would be -2, this would be +4. Well, -1 times -2 would be +2 times 4 would be 8. The next step is to put 1 in for x. So this would be -1, 5. -1 times -1 would be +1 times 5 would be +5. So this would be 8, this would be 5. I need to go ahead and plot my points. So 0, 8, 1, 5, -2, 8, -3, 5. Go ahead and connect all of my points. We're there. So the domain would be all real. The range would be y is less than or equal to, because it opens down, and it would be less than or equal to 9, which comes right here from our vertex. All right, let's move on to the back. Why don't you go ahead and try example 3 on your own. Pause the video, give it a shot, see how you can do. Come back when you are done, and let's see how you did. The first step is to figure out whether it opens up or down. Well, I have a +1 out front, so it would open up. Step 2 is my x-intercepts. They are going to be opposite of this, so it would be 1, 0. Opposite of that, so it would be -3, 0. We can go ahead and put those on our graph to start with. Okay. Next step is to find my axis of symmetry. X would equal 1 minus 3 over 2, or 1 plus -3, however you want to look at that. That would be -2 over 2, which would be -1. Okay. Now I need to find my y value. Remember that my vertex, I can start writing that at this point. But my y value will equal 1 times -1 minus 1 times -1 plus 3. So I don't really need this front y anymore. -1 minus 1 is -2. -1 plus 3 would be +2, which would equal -4. So my vertex would be -1, -4. Next step is to make my table. So I put -1, -4 in the center. Add 1 would be 0. Add 1 would be 1. Subtract 1 would be -2. Subtract 1 would be -3. Remember that my X-intercepts are 1, 0, and -3, 0. So right here my X is 1, so my Y would be 0. My X is -3, so my Y would be 0. Last step would be to put 0 in for X, so Y equals 0 minus 1 times 0 plus 3. -1 times 3 would equal -3. Plot our points, so I'd go 0, -3, -1, -4, and -2, -3. Looking at that graph, what did I forget to do? Well, I forgot to put my axis of symmetry at x equals -1. And there it is. We are good. Example 4, do not worry about that -2 early on, other than to say that my a value is negative, so this is going to open down. You will not use that -2 until we get to the table and finding the y value for our vertex. So I need to find my x-intercepts. They come from here. Opposite of +2 is -2, 0. Opposite of -4 would be +4, 0. So -2, 0 is here. +4, 0 is there. Okay. Now I need to find my axis of symmetry. That would be x equals -2 plus 4 over 2. Well, -2 plus 4 is +2 over 2 is 1. So my x is 1. So in my vertex, I can start writing it as 1, comma. Now I need to find my y value. So y equals -2 times 1 plus 2 times 1 minus 4. -2 times 3 times -3. Well, -2 times 3 would be -6. -6 times -3 would be +18. So my vertex is 1, 18. If I go to 1 and 18, there it is. Remember to put our axis of symmetry in. The next step is to make my x and y's. Put my vertex in the center. Okay. If I put 2 in for x, I would get -2 times 2 plus 2 times 2 minus 4 should equal -2 times 4 times -2. Well, -2 times 4 is -8. -8 times -2 would be +16. Now I need to put 3 back in my equation, so y would equal -2 times 3 plus 2 times 3 minus 4. It'd be -2 times 5 times -1. Well, -2 times 5 would be -10. -10 times -1 would be +10. Remember that these two blanks are symmetrical, so I can just put 16 and 10 in there. Now I need to go ahead and plot my points. 2, 16 would be here. 0, 16 would be there. 3, 10 would be here. -1, 10 would be there. Connect my points. And I am golden there. Last thing I need to do, which I forgot to do in example 3, what did I forget to do? The domain is all real. The range is y is greater than or equal to -4. Cannot forget those. They are very important. The domain is all real. The range is y is less than or equal to 18. Graphing in standard form, that is also a review. So what I would like you to do now is to go ahead and try the review on your own. Take a few minutes, pause the video, give it a shot, see how you can do. The first step when I'm graphing in standard form, remember, is to make my A, B, and C values. Well, my A value would be positive 1, B would be 6, C would be 8. Then I need to determine whether it opens up or down. Well, my A value will tell me that. Since my A value is positive, this should open up. The next step after that is to find my axis of symmetry, which would be X is equal to the opposite of B over 2 times A. Well, the opposite of B would be negative 6. 2 times 1, because my A value is 1. So negative 6 divided by 2 would be negative 3. So for my vertex, my X would be negative 3. I need to find my Y. So in order to find my Y, I will plug negative 3 back in for X. So this would equal negative 3 squared plus 6 times negative 3 plus 8. Negative 3 squared is 9 plus 6 times negative 3 would be negative 18 plus 8. All that added up would get me negative 1. Okay? So my vertex is negative 3, negative 1. I'm going to go ahead and plot that. Negative 3, negative 1 would be halfway down in that little section there. The next thing I need to do is to go ahead and make a table. I'm sorry, no it's not. I want to find my Y-intercept. Well, my Y-intercept is going to be 0 and then just my C value, which is 8. Now I want to have my table. What do I put in the center of my table? My vertex. Add 1, add 1. Subtract 1, subtract 1. Well, my smartboard's going to mess up. There it goes. Okay. So now I need to put negative 2 in for my x's. So y would equal negative 2 squared plus 6 times negative 2 plus 8. Negative 2 squared is 4. 6 times negative 2 is negative 12 plus 8. Well, 4 minus 12 would be negative 8 plus 8 would be 0. So now I can put 0 in both those locations. Then I need to put negative 1 in for my x. Negative 1 squared is 1. 6 times negative 1 would be negative 6 plus 8. 1 minus 6 would be negative 5 plus 8 would be positive 3. Go ahead and graph. I already forgot something. That is my axis of symmetry, which would be right there. I want to go ahead and graph my points. So negative 2, 0, negative 4, 0, negative 1, 3, negative 5, 3. Okay? Finally, and do not forget this, your domain is all real and your range is y. Would be greater than or equal to because the graph opens up. Negative 1 because that is my y value in my vertex. That is our lesson for today. Remember that in intercept form, we are going to use the p-value and q-value to find our x-intercepts. We will use the opposite of what's inside of the parentheses. And after we found our x-intercepts, we will add the x values from the x-intercepts and divide by 2 to find our axis of symmetry. After we have found our axis of symmetry, we are going to treat it just like the other two forms to find our y, then make our table, and all of that fun stuff. Thank you very much for watching the video, and have a great day.